Well, hello, everybody. Come on in to our Facebook Live. We are so excited to have you. Just want to take a moment and introduce myself. My name is Alyssa Lyons. I am the Education Content Lead over here at EVERFI K-12. Former teacher. So I used to teach third grade, 8 years total, but now I've transitioned over into this role, supporting teachers all across the globe. And I'm so excited today. I have been following her on Twitter. You may see her as well. Great content. But we're so excited to be joined by Miss Victoria Thompson today. So I'm going to kick it over to her to introduce herself.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Victoria Thompson. Really excited to be here with y'all today. So currently my role is an education industry executive for the K-12 division of Microsoft Education, specifically for the United States branch. So my territory is, if you take the Dakotas and kind of swipe down all the way to Florida, that is me. My former role is that of a STEM integration transformation coach, which is just a STEM coach. So I drove STEM integration and digital transformation for a group of schools in Washington State. And then my other background besides that is teaching grades 5 through 12 in both South Carolina and Washington in STEM education. So a lot of STEM, a lot of technology, but Pear Deck has been very transformative in every single role that I've had. So I'm very excited to be here today.
Yeah, an amazing background. And so I asked this of everybody because I think we all have different perspectives on it and how many years we've been teaching or different positions we're in. But what's your favorite thing about bringing ed tech into the classroom?
Ooh, that's a good question, but it's also a loaded question because there are so many ways you can take it, right? Like sometimes it's about seeing students in the technology. Sometimes it's about alternative assessment. But for me, it really is about creating these equitable experiences where students can not only collaborate creatively, but also express themselves authentically. Technology has the opportunity to create situations that were really not a thing right before technology even existed. So that is probably my favorite thing about ed tech because the possibilities are really limitless.
Yeah. Yeah, we were just having a conversation last night about the metaverse. And this is like
Yeah.
a huge piece, right? So at one point where the internet seemed just, oh my gosh, there's no way that's going to be in every classroom one day. And now we think about just the possibilities that you can have there. So what else is going to come and what else is
Right.
going to develop? Like it's so exciting and it's constantly changing and getting better. It's a great tool to always bring in. But thank you for that.
Mhm.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. I'm just going to kick us off and tell you a little bit about EVERFI if you haven't heard of us before. If you are an EVERFI user, that's great. I'm going to go ahead and show you a few things that maybe will be new to you as well. So let me pop on over and share my screen for you all. So one of my favorite things to start out with is not only is EVERFI an educational technology company that creates student-facing digital lessons, but it's free. Everything's free. I promise, no catch. We as educators know, right? Like, oh, when's the subscription coming? There will be not one email sent to you. It's always completely free. And as you mentioned, Victoria, one of the things with ed tech is that assessment piece. So thinking about authentic, thinking about getting just reports on our students so that we can make learning equitable. That's one of the things we're able to provide you. And then lots and lots of local support. So you are never in this venture on your own. But speaking of that, we can barely fit this on a page anymore. We started out in the financial education space with really that financial capability, but we've grown from there to address anything of what we call real world skills. What do we want our students to leave the classroom with, knowing that they have the tools to address anything that may come up or even explore things that are brand new? So you'll see these are our verticals here. These are all what we call our courses. They're designed of mini modules or lessons that take the students through interactive and very relatable
Mhm.
situations. Some of the brand new ones, if you're new to EVERFI, this is all new, but if you have been here for a while, we are launching or have launched all of these courses around data science. We have a TurboTax and Intuit TurboTax tax simulation now. So forget those memes where it says, I wish I learned about, or I'm so happy that I learned about what was it, the theories for different math theories. So this is eliminating the need for students to say, when am I ever going to use this? And then just some more about planning for your future and career exploration. Everything that we'll show you today has lots of data to back up to make sure it's fulfilling the needs in your classroom. Lesson tools, from lesson plans, we'll show you some of those with Pear Deck, to even scholarships for your students. I will show you today just quickly how that you can get in, but wanted to show you this slide that student registration is really, really simple. So you can use it tomorrow in your classroom with a coding system, which we know Pear Deck, very similar. And then we are also on Clever if you need to explore that pathway. If you want to as well, you are always welcome to go over to everfi.com/K-12. I love watching our how it works video. It gives you a high level overview of what it actually looks like in your classroom. And then you can always go through and explore the courses and check out some of the mini modules and what vocabulary is included in there. I also just love to see, she scares me every time she pops up there. So, Buzz, I also like to see, there she is again, how long the lessons will be, how long the modules are. It just goes a little bit more in depth here. All right, so I'm going to kick it over. This was just a high level of overview, but I would love for Victoria to kind of tell us about Pear Deck, what that looks like, what that feels like.
Yes. Hey, everybody. My name is Victoria Thompson. I'm really excited to be here with y'all today to talk about one of my favorite tools, which is Pear Deck. So a little bit about my journey. Even though I work at Microsoft now as an industry executive for the K through 12 division, I started in 5th and 6th grade math and science in South Carolina, and I've taught all the way up to 12th grade mathematics when I was in Washington State. And Pear Deck saved my life with not only my educational strategies, but also with teaching STEM education. So often in STEM, it's you do the things, you write the lab report, you meet with your partner, you do this, and then you're done. Pear Deck gives options not only for students to be authentic with their learning, but it also gives them a chance to respond anonymously. And I found that in STEM education, that is crucial because so often students don't want their name attached to something if they're a little bit vulnerable and they're not sure how something will be received. They want to just kind of put something out there and let people respond. And that's what Pear Deck does. So give me just a second. I'm going to share my screen. We are going to take a look at two very different things. And we're going to start with a lesson that I created at my last school, which is gender and racial bias in mathematics. So we had a conversation just as I'm getting set up at my last school where I was working in an all-girls school division. And they were really curious as to just kind of figuring out, okay, what does STEM look like for me? How does STEM work? Da 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 da. So what we did was we came up with this collaboratively, and we utilized Pear Deck decks as an option. So one of the things that we talked about heavily in that course is how do people perceive women in STEM? How do people perceive various types of identities within STEM? We focused on the math component because I was teaching it was like algebra 2, calculus at the time, and this is an important topic. So we talked about gender and racial bias in mathematics. We began with a deck, and you'll notice that Pear Deck is here right now over to the bottom right-hand side. But we opened with why might bias exist in STEM? And with Pear Deck templates, what you can do is students can respond, again, anonymously. In the teacher view or in the teacher deck, you can actually see who said what, depending on your tenant. But I like this because kids were responding and we could just see the responses live on the screen. What happens when students respond on Pear Deck is that they respond individually or within groups, and then all of the responses display on whatever screen you have. It might be a projector. It might be a smart board. It might be a Promethean board. It really doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, you have a ton of responses that are available to you. So we talked about why, really, why my bias exists in STEM. We're drawing or typing thoughts on one head for their point of view, and then drawing or typing point of view in the other head. So this was just a way, again, anonymous responses and ways for students to interact. This was very specific to this topic I was speaking about with my students. But even bell ringers, like what is like x plus 3 equals 7? What is x? Great way for students to engage with content. We talk a lot just really about big questions too, right? So when I think about big questions, I think, what is happening here? Who is telling the story? Why is the story being told? How do people want the story to be remembered? And again, Pear Deck is great for that because this kind of opens that conversation. But then we go over here to just kind of, what do you know? What do you know? And you'll notice that at the bottom here, it's asking for students to write that response. So there are multiple different templates in Pear Deck for folks to kind of respond and understand. Highly take advantage of those. You can modify and adjust based off of what you want to happen. But I find this to be really beneficial, especially in the STEM space. Moving forward, I'm asking for them to draw, write two things that they might have learned. We're reflecting and we're talking about different myths that we see. But ultimately, at the end of the day, at the end of my math classes, really, I ask for them to do what I refer to as a math memoir. And every time there's 3 different steps. Step 1 is thinking of the lesson that we had that day, what challenged them, what inspired them, what sat well, what didn't sit well. Step 2 is that they share out publicly. So step 1 is independent. Step 2, they do publicly. And then in 3 paragraphs or 2 to 3, what they're doing is they're reflecting on their thinking in their math memoir books. And what I really appreciate about Pear Deck is that there's a ton of opportunity for folks to just not only be reflective, but for them to listen and learn with their classmates around them. Because if we want global citizens, this is what we need, right? We need opportunities for them to be able to do this. So this is example number 1. Now we're going to hop over to example number 2. So this one was more kind of like empathy, critical thinking focused. When I think about peer content, when I, again, was at the private independent school where I was teaching all these different grades, they asked me if I wanted to teach a course on whatever I wanted. I had agency, which is fantastic. So I decided to combine my 2 passions of cooking and STEM, and we did a STEM cooking course. So you'll see the screen right here, all through Microsoft Slides. And one of the things that you'll also notice, not just through the slides here, but through PowerPoint period, is that it's just so dynamic to create designs and activities based off of what I want my students to do. If you have not checked out Microsoft PowerPoint or Microsoft Designer, please check it out. There's a lot of cool stuff there. So I did these slides via Pear Deck. And again, my abilities of my kids in that room was kindergarten through 6th grade. If you know these populations, the ability of a kindergartner, very different from that of a 6th grader. But you know what? We're going to make it work. And the way that we make it work is with Pear Deck. Any kid can take a look at this and identify keywords: sweet, chocolate, chewy. So one of the things that we did, not only with our STEM cooking, but also with financial literacy in cooking, is just kind of taking a look at, what are the ingredients? How much did they cost? Is this a cost benefit analysis recipe, right? Like, are we able to be like, this made sense for my wallet? Even when you're a kindergartner, you can understand that $100 for a dinner of 1 is not really feasible. What we did in this lesson really was just estimating time and energy, and also just money for baking. So we're estimating how much time it takes to bake brownies. We're taking a look at understanding the recipe step by step. What are we cooking? Again, this is all through Pear Deck. And students are responding authentically. And not only that, but we're having conversations about the responses. We're doing a what doesn't belong. Because with all due respect, although I love cayenne peppers, right? Like cayenne peppers really don't really belong in a brownie, right? Same with orange juice. Great for breakfast, not that great in a brownie. So Pear Deck really, what I think, opens connections and starts conversations in a way that students are able to be vulnerable, but they don't feel pressured because it's all anonymous. I'm a big believer in that literacy is everybody's responsibility. So we are correcting sentences. We only had 6 people in the room. We don't need 10 cups of sugar. We might only need one, maybe a half cup of sugar. So just ways for students to be involved with the content and also ways for students to respond. Again, for me, that's what Pear Deck is all about. How are we having these conversations? And also, how are we continuing these conversations? So I am a Pear Deck, professed super fan, and I will stop sharing my screen. I've been with Pear Deck and I've worked alongside Pear Deck for years at this point. I started using it in 2015. We'll never stop using it. I think it's so phenomenal. And if you are looking for a way to engage your students that is low stakes but high engagement, Pear Deck is going to be the tool for you. So I'll turn it back over to you, Alyssa. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So let me show you what the teacher dashboard actually looks like. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. But when you go to your teacher dashboard, you're going to be able to do a few things in here. So you'll see I have all of the resources added. So yours may look a little bit different than mine, but you can go in and explore the catalog to see each and every one of the resources, get a personalized view of what it looks like from the student side, and then even view the resources. Let me show you what I mean by viewing the resources. If I go back to my home button, and I go to one of my favorite resources, just being a former elementary teacher, and I click on this resources button here, it's going to give me what I call the gold mine, the jackpot of everything to make sure that you as the teacher are prepared. And then also your students are able to have extension activities to really build and discuss upon the concepts. Within here, you'll find curriculum guides, course outlines, even standards alignment. Beautiful. But then we have in each of our resources a Pear Deck that is part of an introduction activity to set your students up for success so they can really understand what the content is in the lessons and in the courses before they get started. And then you as the teacher have that formative assessment piece. When you click here where it says introduce whatever the content is, whether it's Vault, EVERFI, mental health, it will pop up to a screen that looks like this here. So a Pear Deck lesson for you. You will go ahead and copy this file to your own drive, and it'll open up into our Google Drive here, and we'll see our Google Slides. Make sure that you add on your Pear Deck for Google Slides. So you'll open that up. And then everything is made for you. It'll walk you through as the educator what you will do with your students. This is the lesson, so you can present this. I think of this also as, even in a remote setting and with subs, really great way for students to prime themselves before they get into the content. You can, of course, edit these to what you want them to look like. Students will write their responses, share them, and then they can dive right into the content. When you are ready for students to use this, and I would do this way before you even present the lesson, all you have to do is create a class. and that class will house where your students will be. It'll generate a unique code if you're not using Clever. If you're using Clever, they can just use single sign-on. Students join with that code and they can start working through the lessons. You can also view the course by clicking this View Course button.
A group of friends are playing their favorite game, World Jumpers.
And you'll see it is audio-based, so you can see what the students will experience. Thanks to our incredible partnership with Pear Deck, we have for you, if you go to peardeck.com/everfi, we have a whole glossary of decks for you, a whole library, everything for all of our financial literacy courses, health and wellness, social emotional learning, STEM and career readiness. There's something for everybody in here, and there's lots of lessons for you to use to keep your students engaged throughout the entire school year. I will drop all of these links in the comments so that you do have them. Reach out with any questions as you're going through this. This is what our implementation specialists are for. All right. Well, we want to thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you found a new lesson or a new way to introduce these concepts. As I said, we will drop all the links within the comments so that you can access them, but you can always get started at everfi.com/K-12. You do have local implementation specialists to help you with standards alignment, getting started, answer any questions as you're getting through. I want to definitely take time and the opportunity to thank Victoria for joining us today and carving out time. She has been such an asset and loves Pear Deck. She can be found too on her Twitter accounts. You can find her on Facebook as well. But please let us know how you are using Pear Deck and EVERFI in the classroom by sharing on Twitter, on Instagram. Hey, if you even have a TikTok, go ahead and share there. But until next time, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you again. Bye.